into Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be talking about fertilizer placement and timing on today's program. When you're looking at planting time applications of fertilizer, where should that be? And then when will you need fertilizer down the road? We'll discuss that on today's show.
One of the most frustrating things on many farms around the country each year is my herbicides just didn't work like I wanted them to. Well, we're going to talk today about why herbicides don't work and what you can do to make them work as much of the time as possible.
Well, our weed of the week, we've gotten some feedback that it's been a little too easy to guess what the weed was. So today we're going to give you a challenge. If you can guess what today's weed of the week is, you're better than most at weed identification. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
One of the exploding markets in agriculture right now is that of biological products. So we wanted to talk about that today. Whether you're a farmer or a non-farmer, we want you to understand this whole market and the reason why it's growing so much.
Well, Brian, that word biology seems to scare me a little bit. Maybe it's because of that class that I had to take in college. I'm not sure what it is, but for some reason the term biological can be a little scary for some people. And so I thought it'd be good to talk about exactly what we're talking about here. When I think about biological type products that I use on the farm, I'm thinking about bacteria and fungi that are already present in the soil. And it's ones that scientists have figured out, hey, these bacteria really help our crops or really help our root system. These fungi actually help bring nutrients into our root system. And so for those reasons, farmers really like to use these products once they see, wow, there's going to be a yield benefit to me, my crop's going to be healthier, and all I'm doing is just putting more of what's already in the soil.
Yeah, but the whole thing is for farmers, they say, well, this is, like our dad would say, this is foo-foo dust. Because you can't see it, you don't really know what that does. You got a herbicide, you go kill a weed, it's dead, you say, wow, that was money well spent. Well, when we're talking about yield increase, and maybe it's only 2%, 5%, hey, if it was even 10% yield increase, are you really gonna visually see that difference as you're driving past your fields in the summer? No, you're not. So for the farmer, it's hard to wrap his mind around this, that, hey, this is really going to pay. And what we always tell people is, all right, if there's any investment that's small, you've got to really watch that closely on your farm, because it's not gonna show up visually. It's not gonna show up in the grain tank. You've got to really look close either at your yield monitor or weigh strips out or do something there so you get a good idea, hey, did that give me a good return on investment or not?
All right, there are a lot of companies right now looking at, all right, what are some of these natural things out there, bacteria and fungi that are already in the soil working with plants? Which ones can we identify and how can we reproduce those so we can sell them to farmers that they can apply them on fields or on gardens or wherever plants are grown to try to enhance what we're doing in the field? And as there are more companies getting involved with this, there are more products that are getting tested out there. And I agree with Brian that a lot of farmers will look at it and say, man, there's like 50 products out there that can't all work. There's got to be some that are better than the other. And definitely there's research being done to separate which ones are good and which ones aren't. I'll give you an example though. On our farm, we've got a product that has a beneficial bacteria and a beneficial fungi. It's called Quick Roots. And we use that on our corn and soybeans and wheat every time as a seed treatment. Every time we're planting new crop, we'll put some of this Quick Roots right on the seed. We've done some plant tissue analysis on our farm, which is basically taking the leaves off plants during the growing season. We'll send them into the lab, analyze them for nutrient content, and where we're using this beneficial bacteria and fungi, we're getting more nutrients into the plant. What's happening below the soil is the fungi are actually infecting the roots, which sounds like a bad thing when you say infecting, but it's a symbiotic relationship where the roots are going to give some carbohydrates or sugars to the fungi for food, and the fungi are pulling phosphorus and other nutrients out of the soil and bringing it into the plant root. And you say, well, doesn't the plant root already grab those nutrients? Sure it does. Plant roots are out there looking for nutrients all the time, but with this beneficial fungi, they're so much smaller than even a root hair, so they can get into tiny little places in between soil particles and find more nutrients. So for farmers like us, when we see results like we're seeing with Quick Roots, we get excited about using that product and perhaps trying some other ones as well.
Well, the reason why this market is growing so much is not only the yield gains that are being seen and all this new science that's come in the last few years, but the other side of it is, let's think if you're one of these big ag chemical companies. You probably also own seed and traits, and you're working on all these different things. What's going to cost the most to put out to the marketplace? Well, they say that if I was going to develop a new pesticide start to finish, by the time I get the labeling done, all the testing, all this other stuff, we're looking at most likely $250 million and probably more. That's a lot of money. Whereas a seed trait, you're probably talking $100 to $150 million, still quite a bit of money. Then you go down to one of these biological products, because they're natural things already out there in the environment. The cost to producing those from start to finish in a lot of cases is 10 million, 15, 20 million. It's peanuts compared to those big costs for ag chemistry and traits.
So going into this crop year, you may hear some advertisements or hear people talking about biological products that farmers are using. Don't be scared by that term. What we're really saying is natural products, things like bacteria and fungi that are already found in the soil and have been discovered to be helping our crops bring in more nutrients, expand our root system faster, and all in all, grow better crops.
Well, one of the things that's not helping our crops is our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
I wish I could side dress more than just nitrogen.
You can. While side dressing is efficient for nitrogen applications, you can also use that opportunity to apply PK and the micronutrients your crop needs. AgroLiquid's Calibrate and MicroLink products allow you to nutritionally balance your side dress application efficiently and economically. Let agricultural liquid fertilizer help you make your next crop a bumper crop. For more info, visit agroliquid.com.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving and rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
Fertilizer placement and timing is incredibly important if you want to do the right thing for your crop, minimize your cost, and do the right thing for the environment.
All right, let's talk about planting issues just right off the bat. When you have a crop like corn, we can put some fertilizer right around that seed safely, as long as we don't get carried away with the rate. When we're talking about something like soybeans, that's very sensitive. You can put a tiny little bit of fertilizer by it, but not very much at all. So when we're thinking about this timing and placement, for me, it starts right with the planter. That I really like to have a 2x2 placement option on my planter where, all right, if I just need to put a little bit to help my plant plant for a week or two as it gets started growing, that's fine. Put it in furrow. If I'm looking for, I have to put a huge load out there, that 2x2 option is really nice because just having a little bit of soil in between the seed and the fertilizer really safens it up.
When it comes to placement and timing, what we're really focused on here is a couple different things. Well, actually three. Darren mentioned crop injury, but the two I really wanted to get into are leachability and tie-up. What I'm talking about here is, for example, with nitrate, we know that we can't have excess nitrate out there. Otherwise, with water, especially in light soils, but even in heavy soils, you can lose that nitrate. It's going to go down into the soil. So that's not a good thing. On the tie-up side, what we're talking about there is there are certain nutrients like phosphorus, for example. You can place it somewhere. It's not going anywhere ever. As long as the soil stays in place, that phosphorus is going to be there for you. The problem with phosphorus isn't the mobility like it is with nitrate. It's the fact that it can get tied up with other elements. So in high pH soil, it can tie up with calcium. In low pH soil, it could tie up with iron or aluminum, something like that. So what it comes down to is if you time the application right, and if you place it correctly, like in a band, for example, then you can get by with less fertilizer and you get better uptake during that cropping season.
Now you have to use some common sense too, because it really depends on what soil type you have, what level of organic matter you have, whether you can hold more nutrients or less. For example, let's say you have a very sandy soil, low organic matter. There is not much place there to tie up any fertilizer and hold it.
Let's talk cation exchange capacity. That's what it all comes down to. So here's what we want you to do. Test your soil. See what your cation exchange capacity is. Multiply that CEC number times 10. That'll tell you roughly how much nitrogen your soil can hold at any one time. So if your CEC is 12, multiply times 10, that's 120, that's it. So if your soil already has 30 pounds out there, you can only put 90 pounds on. And you say, well, whoa, I want to put 200 pounds on. Well, you can't do it now. You need to split apply.
Okay,
the other thing is use a nitrogen stabilizer.
Then that split application, we get the following questions. Well, okay, I put some on in the fall. Can I now put some on in the spring?
No, you have to wait until some of that 90 is, or some of that 120 that's already sitting in the ground gets used up. So you got to wait a little while until that crop gets growing. And certainly there are a number of ways you can put fertilizer out later. We really prefer seeing it injected into the soil with a coulter, but you can drag hoses. You could put a very small amount on foliar, but you have to be careful that way. So there are a number of different ways to do that. But all I'm trying to say is with the leachable nutrients, things like nitrate, sulfate, boron, you have to be real careful. We really like spring timing, or even a step better, partial spring, partial summer timing, so we get that timing right.
Well, even with potassium, if you've got very light soils, that potassium can move down through the soil. So that's got to be another one that you add to that list of considerations.
Yeah, I'm not that worried about the potassium, but yes, it is a little bit of a concern. Okay, now let's talk about that tie-up thing. Really, to avoid that, we want to have timing, okay, so you want to apply the phosphorus as close to planting time as possible, but if you want to do it in the late fall and you're in a cold area like we are, it's not that big a deal. But here's the bigger factor. It's where you're going to put that. In other words, if I broadcast it out, there's a much greater chance for tie-up because I just have a little speck of phosphorus here and a speck there and a speck there. And for all the other nutrients in the soil to bind with that and freeze it up, that is really a big issue. So what we would suggest, if you want the best efficiency out of your phosphorus, it's put it in a band. Most of the university studies have shown you can decrease your phosphorus usage by 30-35% if you're banding it as opposed to broadcasting. We've done the same studies on our farm. We've found the exact same thing. So we believe completely what their data shows.
Well, if you want to get the most out of your fertilizer dollars, pay attention to where you're placing that fertilizer and when you're placing it there to get maximum efficiency and maximum uptake for your crop.
Well, if you want maximum yield for your crop, you've got to control our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to do it later in the show.
How will you secure your farm for the future? The Quasar Chopping Cornhead from Capello USA will help. Our design is focused on efficiency, longevity, and reducing harvest loss, making the Quasar the corn harvest solution to bring your farm forward. With hundreds of units ready for immediate delivery, secure your farm's future today. Do it for your farm. Do it for them. Order now. Capello USA. Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
It's a humble idea. Use a biological process to turn a plant into a power source. From that idea came the first Poet refinery. One biorefinery in one town turned into 27 facilities in 27 towns, creating new local jobs, producing hundreds of millions of gallons of ethanol, and providing renewable products around the world. Suddenly, that one little idea seems a whole lot bigger. See the world differently with Poet.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a SoilMax Gold Digger tile plow. SoilMax tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a SoilMax Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with SoilMax. Visit soilmax.com.
Stop coring your bins with the AgriDry Gravity Grain Spreader. Traditional bin filling systems create uneven concentrations of grain and fine particulates. Uniform grain distribution allows even airflow throughout the entire bin, giving you more control over temperature and moisture content, increasing your grain quality and bottom line. Call us today for more information.
Dry Load Store, 1-855-AgriDry.
The math for getting higher yield potentials is simple. 4 is greater than 2. Steiger Rotrax Series tractors give you proven Case IH Quadtret technology, helping you cover more acres in less time. And with 4 independent oscillating tracks, you'll also minimize ground pressure and compaction for a better growing environment, all of which adds up to higher potential yields. The world of farming is changing. Be ready with Case IH.
How can you make your pre-emerge herbicide work better?
You know, in the South, the common recommendation is if you're going to plant soybeans, you need to have an activated pre applied to your field. That means you need to get the pre out there and you need to get enough moisture to get that pre to be working for sure before you can even plant.
Yeah, but it's not just a moisture situation. Here's really what it comes down to. These pre-emerge herbicides, many of them have no contact activity. It's just the residual control, all right? And think about where the weeds germinate. Most of them are in the top half inch, top inch, something like that. Okay, so really what we have to do is get the herbicide on and then get it into the ground. So if you don't have moisture, what else could you do? Well, it comes back to tillage. It also comes back to timing. So I just have to get that herbicide activated before my weeds are going to grow, right? Well, in our area, most of the weeds don't even start emerging until May 1st to May 15th in an average year. So if I wanted to, let's say, make my pre-emerge herbicide work better, all I need to do is maybe till it in, or I could just put it on that much earlier. So if I spray it out in March, for example, I've got a month and a half before I'm worried about any of the weeds coming up. I have plenty of time for rainfall.
Well, plus it's cool enough that we aren't going to see a lot of breakdown of that herbicides, and that's one
well,
thing that
you have to pick the right herbicide too.
Right, because we'll run into the same situation with fall applications. If you do it late enough in the fall, well, the soils are cold enough, there's really not that much biological activity going on in the soil, so the breakdown of that herbicide is minimized. When we talk about those March applications, yeah, there isn't a whole lot going on when the soil is freezing or close to it at night and it warms up and kind of thaws out during the day. Hey, it's a great time to get a herbicide out there because we don't have weeds that are going to use the herbicide up and we don't have a lot of microbial action in the soil that's going to break it down.
So here's where most of the complaints come from pre-emerge herbicides. It's when you spray the herbicide out after the crop has been planted, and especially when the crop was not planted super early. Because the problem is the weeds are going to be coming up in the next week and you don't have any way to till that herbicide in. So now you're banking on the fact that, hey, I'm going to get enough rain, and I'm not talking about 1/10 of an inch. I'm talking about 1 to 3 inches. Am I really going to get 1 to 3 inches of rain this week to make that herbicide work 100%? Probably not. So again, if you want to use a pre-emerge herbicide after you plant, especially when you're planting a little bit late, you can certainly do it. It's labeled, there's nothing wrong with that, and there are plenty of good rescue options in most crops. But all we're trying to say is you're not going to get the most bang for your buck unless you get that 1 to 3 inches of rain this week. Oh, and by the way, all these companies will talk about, well, we only need 1/2 inch to activate it, and we only need 1/4 inch to activate. Yeah, that's nonsense, okay? Quit listening to all that garbage. It's 1 to 3 inches is what it takes.
Don't listen to the marketing guys. Listen to the tech guys. The tech guys know it's going to take some moisture to get into the soil, washed off those soil colloids, into the soil solution, and then into the roots, and finally get into the plant and kill that plant.
Yeah, and where I'm going with this is, yes, you can have some activity at 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, but it's going to take 1 to 3 inches to get 100% activity, and isn't that what we all want? So all I'm trying to say is, your best bet is to lightly till in any pre-emerge herbicide. Your next best bet is to spray it out way early in the spring. And the last option possible, is spray it after you've already seeded the crop.
All right, you said that word tillage, Brian,
Yep.
and I know that gets
several times.
a lot of ag chemical reps nervous because they don't have much control over that. There's lots of different tillage tools that get used.
Yep.
Some are brand new, some need a lot of maintenance. Some may be working that herbicide in too deep or too shallow or not mixing well enough. What I'd say is this: a disc is just not a good mixing tool. It's a good cutting and slicing tool, but it doesn't really mix that herbicide in the soil evenly. I like something like a field cultivator or a soil finisher that's going to do a nice job of stirring and mixing to get that herbicide spread evenly across the soil.
For that matter, even a harrow isn't that bad. The whole point is we want you to run your tillage tool shallow and fast. And hey, a lot of people will say, well, I at least have to cover the wheel tracks. What you want to do then is have extensions on your shanks, like if it's a field cultivator, so you can go down a little bit deeper just behind the wheels, and then everywhere else on the field cultivator, it's running shallow. So go fast, go shallow, and then you usually don't have any issues.
Well, pre-emerge herbicides are critical to a successful weed control program. You need to get them to work. They need to be activated in the soil, whether that's tilling them in or just getting a good rainfall by putting the pre's out there in plenty of time to give you a good safety window to get that rainfall. Either way, you've got to do what you can do if you want to be successful.
One of the things some of the pre-emerge herbicides will control is our weed of the week. We'll tell you which ones coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our weed of the week is yellow toadflax.
Okay, so this is probably that weed of the week that you're getting cocky because you thought, man, I've identified the last 10 of them, and now all of a sudden we throw you a curveball. Yeah, yellow toadflax is a perennial weed that can reproduce both by seed and by rhizomes. It's often mistaken for mare's tail, at least early in the season. It grows an erect stem, and you're going to see leaves that connect directly to the stem, no petioles.
Yeah, it just doesn't get real tall. 1 to 2 feet tall is about it. If you're looking for control options, it is kind of tough because it is a perennial. So when we talk about corn, for example, what are you going to do pre-emerge? There just aren't a lot of good options. I'd say your best bet is try to burn it down with something like Verdict. You can throw a high rate of Roundup in real early. Post-emerge, I'd say Status plus a little bit of atrazine is your best bet. Now, Roundup does have decent control if you're going with the highest labeled rate, but I'd much rather see that in the burn down rather than post-emerge because we can't use nearly as much post-emerge in corn as we can pre.
Well, where do we see this weed normally?
Well, yeah, usually it's not even in corn or soybean fields. It's in ditches, shelter belts, things like that, non-crop areas. And when we're talking about that, amine or ester is pretty decent. If you don't have trees there, then Tordon is absolutely the best. So if it was just out in my pasture, I would use Tordon, no question about it. Use a good strong rate of Tordon and you will wipe that thing out permanently. Turning back to the crops, if I had soybeans, then I'd make sure I had some metribuzin in my pre. So the normal 3 pre strategy we always talk about, that would be great. Then follow post-emerge with Roundup. That's really about all there is for control. In wheat, I'd say sharpen pre, follow post-emerge with Husky. Nothing there is going to be perfect post, so do your very best to get it burned down pre.
All right, we had a little fun with you today and threw you a curveball with our weed of the week, yellow toadflax. Stay tuned, the Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Could one of your most profitable pieces of equipment be your computer in 2015? In today's Iron Talk, we'll explain how your office computer could add 10 to 20% to your yields this year. I can hear you already saying, a 20% yield increase from my computer? Yep. That's what I said. Now, granted, that may be a little optimistic, and it certainly depends on what management steps you're already taking on your farm. Here's how I got there. On our farm, variable rate planting has shown a 6% return on investment. Planting a higher population in the good areas of the field and a lower population through lighter soil types and lower production areas makes sense on a couple of fronts. Then we'll look at one of the big things coming down the road for planters that's already available for drills and is just coming out in planters too: variable variety planting. Research done by South Dakota State University, Raven, and others has suggested that a yield increase of 10% or more is realistic. I can easily see that for some of the fields on our own farm. When you take the simple case of iron deficiency chlorosis, where soybeans visually show interveinal chlorosis or yellowing when soil pHs rise above 7.2 and high salts, carbonates, or even nitrates are present, yields often are cut in half or may even be zero in those areas of the field when planting your high-yield racehorse type variety. It makes all the sense in the world to plant that great defensive bean into the IDC areas of the field and using the racehorse for the rest. This is possible right now with air drills, and it's going to be a possibility with the newest planters coming out as well. To take advantage of this, you need to be doing grid soil sampling and fully utilizing your yield and fertility maps to create custom plans for each field. There's little doubt your office computer can add 10 to 20% to your yields this year if you really push yourself to go for all the yield potential that's out there.
We know that the future is liquid. That's how agriculture liquid fertilizer creates the highest quality products on the market. Because we're committed to finding the best raw materials at the best price possible and getting them from us to you in the most sustainable, responsible ways possible. Agriculture liquid fertilizers, helping you grow the future.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots from Monsanto BioAg is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more, and is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Get Quick Roots today.
Working in agriculture over the past 3 decades, I saw a need for an accurate way to apply dry product to seed. That's where our Changing Times applicators come in. The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in proper distribution. Quantities can be adjusted by the speed of the brush rotation. This allows for even and accurate distribution of product. Application at the time of planting can be used with any seed delivery system and saves farmers time, labor, and money. Remember, CT applicators for the Changing Times.
Your time is valuable. That's why you need a Hagie STS application system. Hagie STS products are designed for precision and efficiency, allowing you to make applications all season long with just one machine. Contact your Hagie rep today.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's our time for today, but before we go, we'd like to invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. That's each weekday at 2 p.m. and 11 p.m. Central on SiriusXM Channel 80, the Rural Radio Channel.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
What's so sweet about manure? Animals eating prairie grass and returning nutrients to the soil through manure is the way nature is intended to work. To learn more about manure and how farmers use it to raise crops, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.